Okay, we are now live.
All right. Give it another minute. Are we expecting Director Huffer and Bill De La Pena?
I did not.
There's
Chuck.
I didn't know things. Right.
I'm glad to see Matt already has his sunset going.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, if we, Gary, should we wait a little bit for Claudia?
I'll check with her right now, Rory, if you'd maybe like to wait just a moment.
Okay.
Michelle, are you live?
Yes,
Could you please email Jim Friedel his login?
absolutely.
Thank you.
I just resent it.
Thank you.
Board member De La Pena will be with us shortly.
All right. Well,
Just a
hold
moment.
off for a minute. Hey, Jim. You're incognito. Didn't recognize you with the hat and the beard.
Yeah, low profile. I was out in the field and I just got back.
Ah.
I know you've told us before, Doug, but where is that nice snow place that you're at?
You know, it's a cabin that I purchased online. I just typed in cabins for sale with no money down, and this picture came up and I stole it. So it just makes for a nice conversation piece.
There, welcome, Claudia. Well, seeing as that it's 6:02, if you're all ready, I would like to call to order this meeting of the Conejo Open Space Conservation Agency, February 10th. And if we have a flag picture, if you could all join me in salute to the flag. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United
States
of America
and
to
the
the
Republic
for which
which
it
it
stands,
stands,
one nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God, indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
for all.
Thank you. And may we have the roll call, please?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, Vice Chair Bill De La Pena,
Present.
Director Huffer,
Yes,
Director Jones,
Here,
Director Nichols,
Yes.
and Chair Skay.
Here. So our first item under public comments, we do have an individual who made a statement card, and I will read that into the record. It's from Chris Locke. Requests that the COSCA Board of Directors develop and implement a plan to eliminate parking on residential streets by visitors to the Wildwood Park Trailhead on Avenida de los Árboles. Every weekend, our once quiet neighborhood becomes an overflow parking lot. When the official parking lot fills up or is closed, cars overrun the surrounding streets. Signs politely requesting hikers not to park on residential streets are ignored. For residents, this brings increased litter, congestion, and noise. We picked up dirty diapers, used PPE, food waste, and beer cans from the street in front of our house. We've seen a park visitor urinating in our front yard. Neighbors with young children are concerned by the dangers from constant traffic. Residents fear property values are being negatively impacted. This is not a short-term COVID-related issue with people seeking outside activity. It is a long-term problem linked to the explosive growth and popularity of Wildwood Park as a recreational destination, which is only going to continue in future years. Please help our local residents with this issue. Just as the park needs protection, so does our neighborhood. And that was Chris Locke. And
I can offer a brief response if
yes, please do,
you
Mr. Stark.
you would like. COSCA has been working for a few years on different strategies for alleviating parking difficulties over in the Wildwood area. That includes expanding parking at the Hill Canyon parking area, advertising other areas as well, and trying to direct traffic. The second bridge in Hill Canyon should figure also in future plans, as we'll move the official address of Wildwood over to that area. As far as restricting public parking on the streets in the neighborhoods adjacent to Wildwood are public streets, so COSCA is not able to unilaterally implement a program to keep public from parking on public streets. There is, however, a process by which a neighborhood can request a permit parking zone that would restrict parking in these neighborhoods to permitted residents and guests. The process is overseen by the Traffic Division in the city's Public Works Department and requires a vote of the people in the proposed parking zone. The effort to establish parking area must be initiated, therefore, by the public. In 2017, Wildwood neighbors rejected an effort to implement such a zone in this area. But if residents are interested in revisiting the concept, COSCA can connect them to the appropriate city staff.
Thank you, Mr. Stark. Let's go to our consent calendar, and that's the approval of minutes from our November 18th meeting. Is there a motion or any?
If I can interrupt, I have a correction. Under the roll call for those minutes, I need to change the titles. It would be changed to Vice Chair Bill De La Pena and Director Huffer. Thank you.
All right. So with those corrections, do we have a motion for approval?
I'll move the minutes
approval.
as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. And was that a second, Mr. Huffer?
Yes.
All right. Any other discussion or corrections, additions? Hearing none, may we have the roll call, please?
Vice Chair Bill De La Pena,
Yes.
Director Huffer,
Yes.
Director Jones,
Aye.
Director Nichols,
Yes,
and Chair Skay.
Yes. So our first item is to receive and file an annual financial report for fiscal year 2019-2020. And Elisa Magana will be presenting that for us. Elisa, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Good evening. I will be providing a summary of COSCA's financial report for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2020. At the end of that fiscal year, COSCA's net position increased 9 million to 85 million at the end of fiscal year. The increase is primarily due to settlement proceeds from Southern California Edison of 8.5 million related to the Thomas and Woolsey wildfire damages. Program revenues also increased to 0.5 million, primarily due to 0.3 million in operating grant contributions and 0.2 million in capital grant contributions. Program expenses increased by 0.3 million compared to prior fiscal year, primarily due to an increase of 0.2 million in salaries and benefits related to vacancies and 0.1 million in maintenance and operations. COSCA ended the year with 10.3 million in cash and investments that is held for future open space acquisitions and maintenance. Capital assets increased by 208,000 compared to prior year with ending balance of 74.9 million. That increase is related to land additions. That's just a high level summary, but any questions?
Are there questions of Ms. Magana?
I just have one question, Rory. Since the majority of the assets for the agency is open space land, is there any calculations as far as the valuation of the land, or is it just a carryover from year to year? Or is there like just an inflation adjustment or cost, or the a CPI adjustment? How is that configured into this type of an adjustment when so much of the assets are really just open space land?
Is that to me? I'm sorry.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
please.
There's no calculation factored into it. It's just that's the initial valuation at the time of purchase of donation, and that just carries forward from year to year.
Okay, that's what I was trying to figure out. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Thank you very much, Elisa. I believe this is a receive and file. I don't know that we need a motion for that, do we, Mr. Stark?
No, just a receive and file.
Okay, very good. Thanks so much, Elisa.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
And item B is not, we are taking off the agenda. That was a trail easement, but looks like that is a item that will be going to the city rather than COSCA.
Correct.
And now to item 6C, authorization to execute a multi-year weed abatement contract for defensible space. Mr.
I
Stark.
have a brief slideshow I'll share with you on this one. Here we are. I went to the wrong one, sorry. Let me straighten out my show here. Well, my slideshow isn't going to happen, so you'll get me live here. So anyway, Ventura County Fire Code mandates that weed abatement be implemented on parcels lying within the fire department's fuel management program area. The current requirement is to reduce fuel in a zone extending 100 feet from flammable structures and 10 feet from public roads. Abated areas are intended to provide safe access for first responders during a wildfire emergency and to keep flames and radiant heat from igniting structures. Where these zones intersect COSCA open space or open space owned by the city or the Conejo Recreation Park District, these partner agencies contract to have this work completed. Following implementation, each site is then re-inspected by the fire department and certified as complete. The total area treated annually by the partner agencies is approximately 425 acres. The weed abatement work is contracted and has been underway under a former contract that is now expired. A new contract is currently out for bid, and this process is being managed by the city of Thousand Oaks. The new contract will be for like the current one will be for 3 years with 2 optional 1-year extension dates. Funds for this work are already included in COSCA's annual budget based on costs paid over prior years. Annual costs for this program vary depending on rainfall and weed growth and are anticipated to remain in the range of prior year costs. As a partner of the project, staff recommends the board authorize the COSCA board secretary to sign the contract for the new pending contract. We don't yet have the bids in for that one, but since the funding is already appropriated, we think we're in good shape there. And I can take any questions if you have any on that.
All right, thank you. Questions of Mr. Stark? Yes, Mr. Nichols.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Stark, for that presentation. I was curious with the vast amount of acres, 425 acres. Is there any idea what the lineal mileage is that the COSCA open space actually interfaces with houses as far as like a perimeter? Do you know what that might represent?
I do not have that number in my head at the moment. COSCA has approximately 2,300 immediate neighbors, though. The
Wow.
perimeter is rather vast.
Yes, okay. All right, and then regarding the contract itself, is there a, when you do enter into the contract, obviously we don't have that in front of us here, but are there certain deadlines where a certain amount of this acreage has to be done by certain periods of time, where there, so much has to be done by, I'm just guessing April 1st, so much done by May 1st, so much done by June 1st. How is that tracked to make sure that the vendor stays on time, on target with the work?
Well, there's a single date that's required by the fire department at June 1st is when this work is supposed to be done. We usually get started, depending on the weather, anytime from late March to early April. So we have a few months to get going. If we get late rain, sometimes that means additional work. So we're, sometimes we have to do certain areas more than once. Ideally, we try and catch the weather on the backside of the rain so we don't get a whole lot of regrowth, but we are responsible for it. So if it does grow back, we do go back and mop those areas up.
Okay, and if there is a delay in the process, obviously weather, you can't do too much, but if there's just a lack of performance and we start getting complaints, which we do periodically from residents, that either it's someplace their favorite open space or in their backyard is not getting done, and we're past that June 1st deadline, aside from just trying to, console the complainant, is there any action taken to make sure the vendor has completed this on time if there is some delay?
There are provisions in the contract such that if work isn't done, the way the program works is if it's not completed and the fire department comes around and re-inspects, there's usually some leeway in that process. They spend the month of June doing the re-inspections. If they find that a certain area isn't being done, then the fire department has the option to go ahead and do it themselves, and then they bill the landowner. In that case, they would be billing one of the partner agencies involved. The contract specifically, however, passes those costs on to the contractor should they fail in performance.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Any other questions on this topic? Yes, Director Huffer.
Yeah, Brian, if could you just briefly describe the components of the bid package that went out to potential bidders?
Well, it's a thick package. What the bidders receive is a sample form of the contract. They get the timelines and what is expected, the standards that they have to perform to. The larger part of what they receive are individual maps of every area that weed abatement has to happen in. I don't know exactly how many there are, but there's a lot of them. Most of the weed abatement areas are small and scattered throughout the community, so that there's a lot of mapping involved in that. But the contract itself is built on a standard format for city contracts.
Okay, I will support the staff recommendation, but if something like this comes up in the future where a bid is still outstanding, I would request that you at least attach a copy of the prior contract so we know what we're working with.
We can certainly do that, and if you'd like, I could follow up afterwards and send you the current contract here too, just for your edification.
If you would, please.
Certainly.
Any other questions or statements? Yeah, I will say that I think it is, even though we don't have the bids back, I think it's important to authorize this getting executed once you do get the bids, because as we all know, June 1st comes very fast and it's really hard work. And as you said, if we get late rains, we love late rain, but it also then means that some things have to be done over again. Can be a real pain and an expense.
Yeah.
Yes, Claudia.
Thank you. I had a quick question. You mentioned that COSCA has 300 neighbors. Is that 300 private parcels or private property?
Actually, there's 2,300.
Oh, 23. I was just going to say, I only caught the 300. I didn't hear the
No,
20. Okay, I thought
Yeah.
that it's awfully low because I remember it to be much higher. Okay,
no, we have a lot of neighbors.
okay. And do we know where these areas are that need to be maintained or serviced?
Yes, so they've all been
Yes.
mapped in our geographic information system, so they're all tracked individually.
Are they
Right.
primarily a part of the ring of open space, or are they within the city as well? Or in,
So these are located throughout really the entire community. Just because some of our open space areas have little fingers that come down into neighborhoods. So those are areas that are the most impacted. The larger areas of green space out, that are more wild, they're not subject to this kind of work. So it's kind of all over the place. It's a very big job.
yes, it is. Thank you.
Okay, if no other questions, or how about a motion? Director Heffer moves.
Yes,
We have a
I
second.
move approval of staff recommendation.
All right,
I'll second.
and seconded. Okay, if no other discussion, may we have the roll call, please?
Vice Chair Bill De La Pena,
Yes.
Director Huffer,
Yes.
Director Jones,
Aye.
Director Nichols,
Yes,
Chair Skay.
Yes. Our next item is approval of an appropriation from the Woolsey Fire Recovery Fund for invasive plant management and habitat restoration plan. This is to
Great.
implement targeted invasive plant removal projects and authorization for the board secretary to execute associated contracts. Mr. Stark, we do have one statement I will read later, but please make your report.
So I am. We'll go back to slideshow and see how this works. Here we are. I'm just going to leave this in this view now, so we don't have to get too confused over it. COSCA's strategic plan recognizes the value of our ecological assets and lists the protection of our natural resources as COSCA's top priority. Native plant communities are vital to the native wildlife, not just the big ones, but insects and amphibians and reptiles even, because they provide forage and shelter for these creatures as a result of evolutionary dependencies. Invasive plants, however, are not native to our region, and they have no natural predators to manage their extent. As such, they are able to outcompete native plants and compromise the integrity of our natural systems. Between the increasing prevalence of invasive plants in the broader landscape and the impact of the Woolsey Hill and now the Herbs fires, many of COSCA's open space areas are being increasingly affected by invasive plant species. In June of 2020, the COSCA board approved a funding framework for addressing fire damage to COSCA open space that includes an allocation for managing invasive plants and restoring healthy ecosystems. That framework was for the Woolsey Fire Recovery Funds. Addressing the expanse of invasive plants over a large open space system requires careful planning and long-term investments in discrete project areas. Due to the costly nature of this work, projects must be prioritized for the protection of healthy habitat areas where restoration of native plant communities is likely to be successful and where efforts will contribute to regional habitat continuity. Preparation of a comprehensive, strategic, and adaptive invasive plant management habitat restoration plan is an essential part of addressing threats posed by invasive plants. The proposed plan will identify threats to native habitats, determine which areas offer the best opportunities for restoration success, identify projects that will contribute to regional habitat values and connectivity, and set objectives and priorities for an invasive management program into the future. While this is all happening, COSCA volunteers and rangers have also been working for years in some areas on weed management projects throughout the open space, and maintaining and expanding these areas is a high priority. Staff recommends an investment of $250,000 for invasive plant management and planning for 2021. A comprehensive management plan is anticipated to cost approximately $100,000 and possibly more, as the plan area is nearly 5,700 acres in size. The plan area is focused on areas burned in the Woolsey and Hill fires, so there's a close nexus with the funds identified in the Woolsey Fire Recovery Fund. Remaining funds would be used to maintain existing weed management project sites and begin pilot projects to expand on these past efforts. The planning work for this project will be contracted to a professional ecological planning firm with experience in invasive plant management and habitat restoration. The proposed planning project and active removal of invasive plants fulfills COSCA's guiding principle number 2 in managing natural resources. While awaiting the preparation of a comprehensive plan, staff have identified early priority areas, most of which have already been subject to past and current weed management efforts. Maintaining the areas where prior work has been implemented will maintain the substantial progress made in these areas. COSCA staff have also identified several potential pilot projects to test restoration techniques and expanding the existing project areas as well. The next few slides show just a sampling of some of the areas that staff have identified. In the Hawk Canyon area, this area has been worked on for a number of years, mainly going after fennel, Italian thistle, milk thistle, and the poison hemlock. The ultimate goal here is to improve the oak woodland habitats down there. The invasive plants really came back strong after the hill fire in this area, so we like to stay on that project and expand into that lower flat area you see kind of on the upper right hand side of the photo. We've also been working mostly on fennel out here at the Rancho Potrero property. A lot of progress has been made in this area, so we're looking to try and maintain that progress, and looking at it in the upper left-hand side of the photo into expanding into this area as well. The Western Plateau is kind of a large area. The work that's been going on in this area has kind of been strategic in certain locations here, mostly focusing on fennel, milk thistle, tree tobacco. We'd like to start, now that some success has been achieved out there, expand the species that are actually being treated there. We also have the whole access trail area. This area hasn't been affected by fire, but it's, well, recently. But we've been working hard on Italian thistle in this area. This will be an interesting area to follow in the coming years. Oh wait, that's funny. But we've lost a lot of oak trees in this area, and that's kind of let the sun shine into the area. So being ready to address emerging pest plants in that area will be important. Here's a new one. This is the Sunset Hills open space over at the Sunrise Loop Trail area. This area burned a month or so back in the herbs fire. We were already tracking some Italian thistle and milk thistle infestations out there. The area is pretty vulnerable right now to expansion of those species. This is the first time we've had the luxury of having funding availability at the time of the fire, so we can act quickly in this area and prevent the spread. This will be a very cost-effective effort at this site. The invasive plant program that we're proposing through the plan and the continued work through this season's for this weed season implements a number of strategic plan goals for COSCA, and they're listed up there at the top. Just in summary, preparation of the plan is a high priority for COSCA. Staff's recommendation is to authorize staff to spend up to $250,000 from the Woolsey Fire Recovery Fund for preparation of an invasive plant management and habitat restoration plan and implementation of targeted invasive plant removal projects in selected open space areas, and authorize the COSCA board secretary to execute associated contracts. Most of this work will be contracted. Volunteers have been a big part of this work in the past and will be in the future. We're a little challenged in this weed season with COVID and our ability to transport volunteers, kind of into the interior areas of open space. So we'll be leaning a little bit more on contractors in this area. The contracts will be with professional habitat restoration companies, so we'll know what we're getting, and staff is well positioned to get good value in this area based on our experience in pricing. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Thank you. Before we take questions, we do have a statement from Elaine Hagan. And she says, as a long-term volunteer working to eradicate non-native fennel and other invasive plants from the COSCA open space, I'm very pleased to see the 2021 action plan for targeted invasive plant management. Over the years, volunteers working with COSCA support eradicated fennel from Wildwood Regional Park and have come close to removing it all from the Western Plateau. The 2021 plan will go a very long way to completing the job there and in the other targeted areas. I request that you vote to approve the plan. Thank you. So any questions from other board members? Mr. Stark? Yes, Director Nichols.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I think this is obviously timely in some respects with the recent fires and the not so recent fires, but thank you for that. One thing that I found missing was one of our common invasive is the Arundo Donax. Is that something that is just so far beyond control that we're just not doing it, or is that just beyond the scope of this effort?
No, that we should definitely be working on Arundo. It's one of the bad ones. We didn't propose it for the immediate work plan this year because that will figure more in the larger plan that's being prepared. The cost, Anna, you had something to add there?
Just to, that's a great observation, Director Nichols. As you probably know, there's quite a bit of Arundo in the Hill Canyon stream. A lot of that is going to be addressed as mitigation for the second bridge that we're working on, because we will be taking that out to compensate for the small impact of habitat. And we're working with Fish and Game to get that finalized. So we're sort of, it's a non-native invasive plant, but we're saving it for another application.
Oh, very good. Yeah, because I know that's a challenge all unto itself. I know it's quite the effort.
Yeah, but it is on our priority list though, and it will feature in the management plan.
Okay, and then if I don't know if you have this available, but there's two components here. There's the plan itself, and then there's also the implementation. So of that 250,000, is there a target, whether it be a percentage or a dollar figure, as to what's going towards the plan and how much is going towards the implementation?
We anticipate 100,000 to 110,000 range for the plan. It's hard to tell until we bid it out. This is a rather large plan, covers a very large area. So thus the higher cost. So that would leave 150 to 140,000 available for on the ground activity.
And what is the hopeful completion date for that plan to be finished and ready to start being implemented?
The plan will likely because there's a lot of survey work involved and development of plans, I expect it to be probably the July timeframe. So
Yes.
it will set the table for next weed season. So I anticipate next weed season will have project sites lined out that are, specifically part of the plan. Staff's well aware of a lot of the weed infestations throughout the open space area, so we've already have some early priorities. So this year is mostly about maintaining the work that the volunteers and staff and our contractors have done over the last few years. But those areas will continue to be priority areas, within the plan.
Okay. And then I know this is a little general when it talks about the different types of the implementation, talking about best management practices, brush clearance, vegetation management, habitat restoration. When it comes to the actual eradication or removal of the species, is there specific types of eradication or methods that you use for each species, or is it just grabbing them by the roots and pulling them out? I mean, do you use things like goats in some areas, or is there some type of chemicals? I know the park district and I believe the city is trying to get away from chemicals, but there are some organic materials that might be applicable. Is that yet to be determined based on the plan, or is there some guidelines given to what the open space agency prefers?
Well, there's a wide array of methods that are used for various species. Each species has its own methods. So there isn't a catch-all methodology that works for all species. There'll be the decision on what method to use at a given site. It's based on the plant's biology that we're trying to approach, the time of its growth cycle that we're approaching it, access constraints. So there's a lot of, there's both logistics and methodological. We're pretty familiar with the variety of them and how to scope out which one. It's really hard to tell. A lot of these species, most of the work that's been done out involves some combination of handwork. There are times when spot applications of small amounts of herbicide can be very effective. Mechanical may be an option in some areas, although a lot of times large scale mechanical disturbance of a site is detrimental to your long-term effort. So goats or other grazers are not out of the question. They're a legitimate tool in the box that we'll look at before we do any of those larger scale things that would involve like an animal or some larger scale mechanical treatment. We'd want to wait for the plan to do that, so we got the most up-to-date information and that we know we're applying the right method for the right purpose.
Well, thank you. And again, Mr. Stark, I want to thank you for this effort, because I know in my opinion, I think we're kind of turning the corner into getting more active management of our open space. Again, we've kind of trying in that transition from the acquisition to the true conservation of the open space. I think this is a good step in that direction, where we kind of look in the rearview mirror and maybe see some things that kind of got left behind. I'm glad to see we're taking that. So thank you for this report and for the action to be coming forth.
Okay. Other questions? Yes, Director Huffer.
Comment and a couple of questions. It strikes me that the invasive species work has to be extremely labor intensive and requiring labor that is specialized and knowledgeable in this area. You mentioned that much of the work will be done by contractors. What type of background would these contractors have? I mean, you're not going to get just a regular garden maintenance crew out there doing this kind of thing.
No, there are firms that specialize in working in natural areas on invasive species. It'll be important that the labor we have on those sites knows what plant is which, so the right ones are being dealt with. There are a few specialty providers in that area that are local to Ventura County and that we've used before and have a lot of faith in. But over time, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of labor. When the plan comes through, we will also be identifying areas that are appropriate for volunteer work. We think going into the future that volunteers can play a big role. There are a lot of talented people in our community that know native plants, and in some areas we think we could take advantage of that knowledge and work with volunteers to get a lot of this work done. We're actually kind of excited about an opportunity like this because it's a great way to get the community involved in, you know, real live stewardship of open space. The community wants to help, and we want their help.
Okay, and you mentioned in part of your presentation, you were talking about the Sunrise open space after the Herbs fire, and you said this is a great opportunity because you're catching it early. Being a complete novice in this area, it seems to me it's much easier to identify invasive species when they're grown. How do you go about doing that when you've got just burned space?
Anna and I just, you know, we see the smallest little plant. Like when you're steeped in the identification of weeds, they're pretty easy to identify while they're pretty small. It's true that they, we got to let them grow a little bit before going after them. Some species you wait until a certain part of their life cycle when their roots are depleted of energy, you want to hit them then. Others you want to hit early. So it's mainly, this will be an observational thing. But we know what the little critters look like, and they're not long for the world.
All right, I get out and do at least some hiking, and I have to admit, with some embarrassment, being a biology major some years ago, I couldn't identify a good plant versus a bad plant if my life depended on it. So
it's a specialized thing. Anna and I can smell them.
And then you also have to be very cognizant of getting them before they seed. I was thinking of like the thistle. Do you have to have them bagged, the heads bagged? And I mean, it definitely labor intensive, but timing will be an issue as well.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a lot of work to get done in a short amount of time because sometimes the seeding period and the growth period of different species are of different length. So in some cases, you may just have a few weeks to get this one species at this one location, because it might be very different at Sunset Hills as that same plant would be in Dos Vientos because of the varying climatic issues. So it's an observational art and then a logistical feat to land people and resources at the right place at the right time.
Right. And it seems like 250,000 is not that much to do a plan and to start some implementation. So I expect that maybe in next year we will be asked to augment that.
Yeah, I think we'll be ready to go on some larger projects next year. And I'm not, certain that we'll expend all of the allocation we're seeking today. We just want to make sure that we have the resources to deploy for this season, because if we're not on that site this spring, then we're going to lose a year's worth of work. So we really want to get there.
Okay.
If you need any more money, Felicia will just get some more money for us.
Right. Okay. Any other comments from board members or staff? Do we have a motion to adopt?
Sure, Madam Chair, I'll move to approve.
Mr. Nichols moves and Mr. Heffer seconds. All right. If no other discussion, please do the roll call vote.
Vice Chair Bill De La Pena,
Yes?
Director Huffer,
Yes.
Director Jones,
Aye.
Director Nichols,
Yes.
and Chair Skay.
Yes. Okay, we'll go on to COSCA Volunteer Corps activity, and that's a report from Ms. Hoover.
Thank you, Chair Skay. I have a brief PowerPoint. With regard to the Trail Watch and Trail Adoption programs, volunteers logged the following hours since we last met. For November and December of 2020, Trail Watch had 90 reports and 155 hours donated, and Adopt a Trail had 38 reports and 82 hours donated. That brings our total for 2020 to 593 reports and 1,020 hours for Trail Watch, and 279 reports and 754 hours for Adopt a Trail. And we're also off to a great start for 2021. In January, our Trail Watch volunteers logged 56 reports and 87 hours, and Adopt a Trail volunteers logged 34 reports and 65 hours. We very much appreciate the efforts of our dedicated volunteers, as their work is integral to our open space management efforts. And with that, I'm available for questions. Thank you.
Questions on the volunteer program of Ms. Huber? God love them. Thank you, volunteers. And we hope to be able to incorporate more of that, obviously, as the COVID restrictions start to ease. Okay, Mr. Kuba, report on ranger operations and maintenance.
Start off with, because it is Valentine's Day and we've seen this picture years ago, but a little love from open space. This is some lichens up on the Santa Rosa Trail on the north facing slope there. Yeah, it's really fun. Next. So over the years, I've tried to get the rangers to do more photography. And this is the reason why, because when they do go to an emergency, they have a unique perspective of it. Of course, their job is to keep the public away from the helicopters and things like that, but they are able to get some photos. And this time they got some video, and hopefully it works over Zoom. So Brian. And it doesn't really go. Oh, there it goes. Anyway, this was a accident, a mountain biker accident on Lily Tomlin. And the helicopter typically in these situations will fly the person out of the remote location and then transfer them to an ambulance or to some way to get them to the hospital. So in this case, they just they loaded them up in the Stokes, flew the helicopter a couple thousand feet and landed. And that's a much safer thing for the patient and for everybody involved. But 2 of our rangers were there that day and were able to do crowd control and get some video. So that was nice. Next. Okay, a little bit about the herbs fire. I did collect some pictures off the internet, and it was a pretty dramatic evening. If you hadn't heard, the fire started at the top of the hill on the east side of Herbs and moved very quickly down the hill. The radio traffic seemed that Herbs Road was going to hold it, and it didn't. You can see the embers flying all the way across there, and then it dropped into the bowl on the west side of Herbs. It was a very dramatic time because people were coming home from work, so it was very visual. The fire department, it went into darkness, so the fire department can no longer fly, so they did use dozers. Next. And that's a dozer operating at night. That's a great shot. They run what's called hotline, so they run the dozer right on the fire line. The fire's licking up the side of the dozer, and they just follow the hotline and try and beat it back. Next. And that hotline does do some damage. In this case, it went across a V ditch of ours and up the hill, and then next it took out some sections of the trail. And you can see the disturbed soil there on the hillside, and that's what Brian was talking about earlier. That is going to be a hot spot for non-natives. But it opened up the area, and you can see the metal lying there. We don't know where that came from, from years and years and years ago, but we got that cleaned up. Next. And that's the trailhead the day after. Some trail damage there, and the sign was okay. That's, I think, one of the first signs that survived the fire. Next. A little bit more of the damage, but the Rangers, we had the crew, which is a contract trail crew that we use. And they were already signed up to be with us the day after the fire. So they all went up and did trail work. We cleaned up the trail, the dozer marks, reestablished some stuff next, and rebuilt, excuse me, a Sutter wall here that burned up. And we did that, the Rangers did that all in 3 days. Go ahead, next. And we actually made it a little bit safer by removing these the T stakes there. And next. And there's the fixed Sutter wall. And that was just great that the Rangers were able to get out there and do all that in a couple days. So the trail was really only closed for about 3 days, which is awesome. Next. And so throughout town, we get a lot of illegal dumping. And since I manage the urban parks in town, it's an ongoing headache. And it is an open space as well. Very difficult to catch. We actually, this is over off of Westlake Boulevard near Lake Eleanor. We had cameras up there for months, and they were just not placed in a position where we got the name off of the truck. And I'm not going to say what we built, but we have a very secret little thing that we're able to put out now and get very good photos. And we got actually caught 3 different companies dumping. They all got a naughty letter, and they came out, cleaned it all up and apologized profusely for it. And that was very nice. So it ended up being good, and hopefully word got out that we don't appreciate the dumping. The area is signed, and we still have the camera out there in case there's any more dumping. That was a good catch. And we had a very big wind incident. We lost a lot of trees in the urban parks, and we lost quite a few more on the whole access trail. Once again, just the whole access trail is just being wiped out of oak trees. And this was all in that same week after the herbs fire, and then on to this. So this was just the tree removal. And if you've been on the whole access trail, you'll know we leave the stuff there as much as we can. So we basically just clear the actual trail itself and leave the material there. The material is great biomass for the little fungus, bacteria, and insects that are going to grow up and feed the birds and all the other thingies. So we always leave it there. And I know it's unsightly, but that unsightliness is a human thing. Humans think it's unsightly. Animals think it's awesome. So happy smiley Rangers. And we're continuing on the Los Robles reroute. We have made some wonderful progress in the past 2 weeks. Like I said, the crew, the trail crew out of Ojai, has been working very hard with the Rangers in the really, really cold days, if you remember a week or 2 ago. So everybody was very bundled up and out doing trail cutting. Chainsaws do keep you warm in those situations, I will say, from my past experience. But progress is going very, very well. We're hoping to get tread work started in about 3 weeks, serious tread work. And then we've left the last little bit of the trail closed off so that we can make the transition to the new trail in 1 day. But it's going very well, and the alignment's super fun. It's going to be a shift for people because everybody's they know their trail, they've been doing it for years, and here we're going to shift out something, and I think there's going to be some blowback, but we're going to get some PR going and let everybody know that it's coming up.
Very good.
More flagging and cutting. Very dense. The ceanothus, the white ceanothus, has those sharp spines, and it's a tough one to cut through. So we did have some rain, and it was a dramatic rain all at once. exposed a lot of material, some weak spots that we hadn't seen. So there was going out and rebuilding. This is the Los Robles Trail as you come out of the Wildwood Mesa. It exposed the substrate that we had there. We actually have some geotech underlinement, and that showed up. So the rangers went out and snipped that. And then the best time to work trail is during the rain, because you can see where the problems are. And all you really have to do when you're working trail is just be smarter than water. However, water is very, very smart. So learning where to channel it and so it doesn't cause further problems is a good challenge. And this is on the Los Padres Trail. There was a big, huge blowout there, about 7 feet deep, and had to bring in material from hillsides and wheelbarrow it in and fill it and compact it in. And this is just a public thing again. We've had some complaints about mountain bikes going too fast, and we want to make sure we're trying to get the word out there. If you're out on the trail hiking and you see somebody that's riding correctly, please give them a high five or thumbs up. But if they're going fast, hey, slow down, slow down. We're trying to get the word out on that. And not a sunset shot, but it kind of looks like one. I love this perspective of the herbs fire from the hillside above the houses, and kind of looks like a sunset. So if you have any questions, I'm available.
Very good. Thank you, Matt. Questions of Mr. Kuba?
Yes,
Yes, go ahead, Claudia.
thank you. Mr. Kuba, I was just wondering about the illegal dumping. There seems to be quite a bit of that going on. And it was awfully nice of you to just let them know that you caught them in the act and then they came and cleaned up. Do we have any fines?
We do have that ability to cite them. In this case, because of the size of the dumping that had gone on there, and these were the 3 we caught, there was actually other piles. So the discussion was, if we can get them to clean it up, that would be preferable, because we don't have the ranger time to go out and do it. So it ended up working out very well for us. I did put that in the letter that if it was not cleaned up and they did not contact me, that there would be a citation. So yes, there is an option, but in this case, it was preferable for us to get it cleaned up.
So I see sometimes, and I've mentioned this to General Manager Jim Friedel, at Triunfo Park, there seem to be huge piles of wood fire, basically, dropped off every now and then. And do we have a camera there too to catch them in the act?
We only have the one special sneaky camera right now.
Okay.
And we have had it out at Triunfo. We've had it out at Canada Park and some other hotspots, Spring Meadow and Wildflower. Those are the big ones. And we just haven't caught them. So it's a tough one. We were really, really lucky to get these, I'm telling you.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right, Director Nichols, you had a question?
Yes, thank you. Yes, as a follow-up, Matt, so if I understand correctly, that in lieu of the citation, you asked these folks to not only clean up what they dumped, but everything that had been dumped there in the past. So they were, in essence, cleaning up their mess and everybody else's that had been left there over time. Is that correct?
There were 6 piles there, and we're not sure who did what exactly, other than the photos that we had. But we said they needed to clean up their stuff. They came in and cleaned up all of it. So we considered it a win-win on our side.
Okay. Well, hopefully it's also an educational approach and word will get out to that community, because I'm sure it's a close-knit community. They all know each other and compete with each other. So hopefully that will work. And then also with the various fire recoveries, wind recovery, rain recovery, recovery seems to be the mode right now. Is that still ongoing? You mentioned things were done within a matter of a few days, but is there still significant work to be done, or how much of that was actually completed?
Well, a lot of it was Band-Aids. We could always do it better if time allows. We just don't have the staffing time to do a lot of these things. So we want to make safety always priority one, and getting that the trail safe was high priority. And we also need to get the Los Robles Trail brushed before bird season. So there's a lot of things that are lined up, and the Rangers are just cranking on them. They're moving forward on all of it. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thanks for the update.
Cranking on it is definitely the operative phrase. I'm just amazed looking at your report with our very small ranger staff and field staff, how much you guys get done. It's fantastic.
Very proud of them. Very, very proud of them.
Other questions of Matt Kuba? All right, we will go on to COSCA updates from Mr. Friedel and Mr. Rogers. Jim, you want to go ahead first?
Sure. Really, this is the opportunity for CRPD to throw out something in our news is we were able to secure a $2.7 million grant the other night from one of our best partners. So we're really excited. The city awarded the grant for the Global Adult and Teen Center project. So those will be great. And as the COSCA board members know, the Senior Center, Global Adult Center is being used as a vaccination center now for the next 6 months. So even though the center is not open to the general public, the community is getting lots of use out of it. So thank you to the city friends here for that grant. Looking forward to doing that project.
I had to go to Ventura Fairgrounds to get a COVID shot. I had a little trouble convincing him I was over 65, but other than that.
Oh dear. Gary, did you have anything to report from the city side?
Just that we are working diligently, and in the near future, we'll be coming back to the COSCA board regarding the Rancho Potrero Equestrian Center. So there is some activity there, and I would echo Jim's comments. We have a great partnership between the city and CRPD, and it's just great that working together, we can provide some great services to the community.
That's why CRPD smuggled me onto the council.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rogers. We will go on to board member comments. Any comments from, yes, Director Huffer?
Yeah, I wanted to thank Brian for sending out the copy of the memo or the information on the ad hoc committee on staffing and budget. Director Jones and I got together with several city and CRPD staff people several weeks ago, and the staff presented a lot of good information. I know it just came out today, so you might not all have had a chance to look at it yet, but a lot of good information about why COSCA needs additional staffing, which we all understand, but some good points there, and then the recommendations by staff for 4 new additional staff positions in COSCA. So I appreciate that being sent out and distributed to all of our board members, and also went out to all of the CRPD board members. So.
Thank you. Yes, I did read it. It's very compelling. We're operating on a shoestring, and luckily Matt is turning gray, but it looks good on you, Matt, for all your work.
Yeah, operating on a shoestring.
We could use some
a lot
help.
of times it's broken shoestrings. So yeah, we need all the help we can get.
Indeed. Okay, other board member comments?
Yes.
Yes, Director Bill de la Pena.
Thank you. I was wondering whether we could get an update for our next meeting on how the home hardening program is coming along.
I can share a little bit of that now, and
Oh.
I'll have more next time. But We've been working with the Fire Safe Council. They've set dates for volunteer training to train their volunteer home ignition zone inspection volunteers. Those will start at the, I guess, 4th week of March and run through early April. And they expect that they could start assisting landowners with, some information sometime later in April, perhaps. The next step after that kind of immediate project is to put together some additional informational webinar presentations. So right now we're putting together a database of, the HOAs and organizations in the community that might have interest in these programs, so we can try and advertise them most directly to the people that might get the most out of it.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Director Nichols?
Thank you, Chair. Just as a follow-up to that, I don't know if you're aware, but the the Insurance Commissioner's Office for the state of California just came out with an announcement of that the state is going to be offering guidelines for home hardening. And so that just came out this week. So that may be of use as that program moves forward. Second thing I was going to mention, to follow up to Director Huffer, is in looking at Matt Kuba's slides, it looked like the Rangers were kind of being the Keystone Cops, shuttling from wind events to fire events to flood events. And my thought, well, who's managing the station? If they're all just running around. And I think it goes to the report, which I have not yet read, but I'm sure that's exactly what Matt's thinking of, is just we're barely able to keep up with emergencies and can't get to the real stuff. So hopefully we can help that staffing situation and move that forward. And then lastly, as a follow-up to the earlier public comment about the Wildwood parking lot, which continues to bubble up, sometimes vigorously, sometimes mildly, but nonetheless, it's always bubbling. I was going to suggest, if the board would entertain it, perhaps putting together an ad hoc committee to further research some of these issues. I know a lot has been done in the past, but it seems like we really need to push this forward to, kind of get the options out there to the community, particularly the neighborhood, to work with them. My impression, right or wrong, is that there's been a lot of discussion, and there seems to be a variety of preferences, but can't really agree on what needs to get done. And I'd like to see if we could perhaps put a focus on that with the COSCA ad hoc committee if possible. Work with the neighbors, work with the staff, work with the users. Part of that is educational, as Mr. Stark was mentioning, with some of the plans ahead, but I think some of that is still out there. We need to do something right away. And if that were agreeable, I think we would probably reap some benefits if we were to do something like that. And I'll leave that to staff to make a recommendation as far as what should or shouldn't be something like that, but I think it would be helpful.
Okay, thank you. Other board comments or staff comments? Hearing none, I think we are ready to adjourn. Our next meeting will be Wednesday, May 12th. And I hope you all stay well. Thank you so much for all participating.
Thank you all for your time. Really
Good to see
appreciate it.
everybody. Thank
Happy
you for all your
Valentine's.
work.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Right, happy Valentine's.